Da, 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 da. And here we are. Thank you guys for joining us with another exciting episode of our podcast, Running the Race with Perseverance. And today we have Carol Matranga with us, who's been part of this church for quite a while.
Right.
I'm not going to say how long, but
Good.
A long time. A long time. And so, Carol, first question is, who's running this race with you? Tell us a little bit about your family.
Right now, it'd be my husband, George, and my kids, Tim and Nancy.
Okay.
And then his family is all here, his siblings. So we're really close with them because my family, I'm the last one in my family.
Oh, you are? Okay.
Yeah, and
okay.
my nieces and nephews are all spread out all over the place. So
Okay.
it's nice to have that.
All over the place.
And I have my support group here at church and my warriors, which are my exercise buddies.
You're warriors.
We call ourselves warriors, yes.
I can imagine. And when do your warriors meet, and what kind of exercise do you guys do?
Well, we met when we had curves by our house.
Okay.
And as people came in, we were friendly people, so we'd say, we go for coffee right after because Bel Air was right there.
Yeah.
And so there was like 10 of us that got really close. And when it closed, we all went over to Family Fitness. And then when COVID came along, we all dispersed and we had the fire at that time.
Yeah.
And but we all stay close and we go out to lunch together. And there's about 4 of us that are in this new exercise group, which is outdoors. And we meet at a park.
Yeah.
And the gal that started it said her mantra was, "Move it or lose it." So
move it or lose it. I love it.
Yes. So that's what we do. We have cardio, and then George and I lead the weights section because she
Okay.
passed away, so we all took apart. Somebody else does the stretchy bands, and
I was noticing George is looking a little more buff these days.
that's because he leads. I do the in between. He does 3 sets, and then I have a thing. Fortunately, she left us with sheets to go by with
Yeah.
what she did, so
Okay.
then we took over. So
Very
it's fun.
cool.
We have a good time with it.
That has spiritual applications too. Move it or lose it.
Yeah.
I like it. So, and that's part of our running the race with perseverance, right? It's a marathon. It has ups and downs, hills, challenges, easier parts, harder parts. And so I want to dig into your life a little bit, your journey, your race. And the question, share with us some of the ups and downs, some of the challenges you've had along the way, and how you see God coming alongside you in your run.
Well, I went to a Lutheran school from 1st grade till 8th grade, and so we always had to have Bible verses. That was
Yeah.
part of our curriculum.
And where was that? Where did you grow up?
Well, I grew up in Cicero, so
Cicero.
don't worry about. I'm perfectly safe.
Where is Cicero?
It's next to Chicago, but people know it for one of those famous gangsters, which I will not name. But we had nothing to do with them.
Okay, you grew up in the shadow
But anyway,
of
the
gangster.
church was in Oak Park.
Okay.
And the reason my parents went there was because they had a Lutheran school, although there was a closer church to us, but it was important to them.
Okay.
That,
Since you go to that school.
Yeah.
Nice.
So we have,
you grew up in the school and the church.
Yes, and I was very active in what was known as the Walther League at that time. And
Okay.
then went to a public high school, which was very scary because there was like 13 in my class. And then I went to a high school that had 500 in my freshman class.
Wow.
And 3 stories in the building.
Yeah.
But then I went to Concordia River Forest
Okay.
for teacher training.
All right, quick diversion. How'd you meet George?
Well, I told you there was different ways that I see God in my life, and this
Yeah.
was one of them.
Okay.
Because when they ask you where you'd like to go, because they used to place you when you graduated from River Forest. They don't do that now. You have to get your own job.
Okay.
But anyway, they said, "Is there any place you'd like to go?" And I said, "Any place but Illinois, because I grew up here. I'd like an adventure." Where'd they send me? Decatur, Illinois.
Well, Decatur's not
So
really
this is where I saw God leading me, to Decatur, because when I was in my 3rd year of teaching, George came to do his vicarage there, and that was the husband God planned for me to have.
There you go. So did you guys do like the Jan thing and meet and then get engaged in 3 days and get married in 3 weeks?
Not quite that
No.
fast. Our first date was October, because he came in my room and I was hanging ghosts and things off of my, off of the lights. And then...
We'll edit that out, the pastor's wife hanging ghosts. Okay, keep going.
You know, it was Halloween time. But anyway, then that's when we first started dating, and then he proposed in February, and I thought we'd get married after he was out of the seminary, because he had one more year.
Yeah.
And he said, no way, we're getting married now, because I'm not coming back and forth to see you.
He wanted to close the
I won't
deal.
be able to study.
He saw when he got a good thing going, not
Exactly,
letting
so
it
we
go.
got married in August, and then I went
Okay.
to the last
right.
year in St. Louis and taught there.
Okay, so you lived together his last year. You
Yeah.
taught and he went to school.
Yeah.
Very good. All right, so yeah, you shared kind of with me your theme verse and kind of how you've seen God move in your life. So tell us some other stories that where you've seen God show up.
Well, if you want the hard stuff. So I said, I see God, leading me. I see him walking next to me, like when I was sent to that school.
Yeah.
And I had a car, so there were 5 churches that were supporting the one school.
Okay.
But so I had a car, so they sent me to one of the other churches, because you always had to do church work if you were a Lutheran school teacher.
Yeah.
And they asked me to lead a children's choir. That's really not my area of expertise, so I figured God was next to me leading me because I did it.
When you were there.
But, that
Okay.
was a kind of a thing like that. But then the where I see God carrying me
Okay.
is like when I was 13, my dad passed away, and I was real close to him.
Wow.
And that's the first time that verse popped into my head right away, that God will never give you more than you can handle.
Okay.
And so I see him carrying me and leading me to an exit, because he said a way of escape that you'll be able to bear it.
Yeah.
And I see other people on the other side ready to help
Okay.
take me along.
Okay.
To help me with it. So that was my first time. And then, we had a child that, we got our 2 adopted kids, which was great.
Yeah.
We prayed for that. And then Christy came along, and everything was fine until she was born, and she was a special needs child.
Okay.
And I had to do things, I'm not a nursey type person, things that I never in my life would have thought I had to do. But anyway, he saw carrying me through that situation, but she passed away at age 12.
Age 12.
Yeah,
Okay.
age 12. Yeah, she was 3 months in the neonatal, so we had a,
When she was first born.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
And then there was a lot
that's
after.
a long haul. Yeah.
But anyway, and then there was a car accident where I was 3 months in a body jacket afterwards, because I had some fractured vertebrae and stuff.
Wow. And then how old were you when that happened?
How old was I?
Yeah.
Oh, we were married. It was in 2005 or something.
Oh,
like that.
okay.
I don't remember, yeah.
So not that long.
No,
Okay.
but I never remember dates. When bad things happen, I put them in the back of my head. Don't ask me when I had surgeries or anything like that. I
Okay,
don't
we'll
remember.
leave the surgery off
Yeah,
the table.
but anyway, we got through that. We had the house fire, and while we were out of our house during the house fire, that's when my identity, living with my daughter in West Sac, that's when my identity was stolen. And my daughter is very protective of me, and she went as far as going to the FBI. She hired a private detective. We knew who did all this, was doing it.
Wow.
We could get help from nobody. The FBI said, you're handing me this on a silver platter, but we can't do a thing about it because this is a victimless crime.
A victimless crime.
A
How's-
victim. What
how's
are
that
you
work?
talking about?
Yeah.
So finally, and we knew that the post office was in on it, because they were not sending the mail to my daughter's house. And she even went over and said, put it aside and I'll come pick it up. Oh, there's no mail there for you. So she followed the mailman one time and found out what he was up to.
So she was the private investigator.
She was, because,
Wow.
and she's a computer whiz.
Yeah.
So she was watching them because they tried to get credit cards, like 15 of them on New Year's Eve in George's name. I mean, she always had to stay one step ahead.
Wow.
Because, they tell you to go to those 3 places where you
The credit check places.
check
Yeah,
thing.
yeah.
She would freeze them. They would unfreeze them.
Wow.
I mean, today, it's not safe to touch a computer, so I don't touch a computer. But anyway, if it wasn't for her, I don't know what we would have done. Because
Yeah.
so finally, when we got to our house, and I still wasn't getting mail, we got a P.O. box.
Okay.
And then finally, that stopped it, but that was like 2 years after the whole thing started, so.
And there was, I think I remember when they bought a car in your name
Oh,
or
yeah,
something?
from Carvana, first they bought a $22,000 one, then a $48,000 one.
Wow.
Wells Fargo called me and said, and I went in, and my daughter said when I came home, I had this look on my face that she'd never seen before. I was in like shock. My daughter called Carvana and told them to put a hold. They got into our fire money at Wells Fargo.
Yeah.
Because how this all started was they stole the mail out of her mailbox where she first lived when we were there. And it was at tax time, and so they got my Social Security, a tax form.
Okay.
And so they had all my information.
Wow.
And they lived right behind where she lived. And they were doing it to other people. She was able to see they were. But, nobody's done anything about that. And they had been in jail for this type of thing before, but
Okay.
it was.
So, in summary,
Yeah, what?
you learned something new. You have your daughter, right? She has
Yes, she's amazing.
difficulties.
Oh, yeah, that one.
Your first
the other
daughter,
one,
yeah,
yeah.
Christy. And she dies at 12.
Yeah.
And then later on in life, there's this accident. And then you just kind of blew by the fire. Like, oh, yeah, that was nothing. You got burned out of your house, right? You had to
Yeah.
live. How long did it take?
It was like, I don't even remember.
Okay.
It was a long time, because we lived part-time with her, and then they were starting to stalk the house, and they said, we can't do anything unless they come on the property. They said, maybe your parents should go live someplace else. Well, George's sister Gloria has a little cottage
Yeah.
in Granite Bay on her property, so we went and lived there for a while.
So now we had stalking. Gosh, wow, what a journey. This is like you're running your race and all of a sudden we're off in the wilderness, right?
Exactly. It was
Yeah.
like one thing after the other. It's like, is this never going to end,
Yeah. So in that time, I remember having conversations with both you and George. I was very impressed by the fact that you still showed up in life. And as much as what was going on the inside of you, the outside of you. So what holds you in that time when you think of God being in your life and that? What stands out to you?
Well, just the fact that, you got to live your life.
Okay.
And you just got to move forward, and you can't let it dominate your whole self, and just the fact that, I was baptized shortly after I was born. I've always been a Lutheran, I've always been Christian, I've always been
Yeah.
that, I did get mad at God one time when our daughter was born.
Yeah.
And then she had to have a trach put in and all that stuff. I said, why are you doing this,
Yeah. Normal question we all ask, right?
We had prayed for children. We had these two great adopted kids, and now you're giving us another one, which was great. But why this? But
Yeah.
it's a lesson too. It made me and my kids, I realized, much more aware of other people's struggles, and you don't make fun of other people that you see that are special needs, whatever.
Yeah, so by having to live that, it kind
Yeah.
of changed your perspective.
Yeah, 'cause,
Okay.
she had a great personality, but never could talk and
Oh,
whatever.
okay.
But you knew it was she had the.
Yeah. And so that would kind of shaped your whole family experience. Then,
Yeah,
not
so
just
I
you
think
guys.
we're all much more, I don't know what you want to say, kind-hearted or whatever, aware of other people's struggles.
Yeah, we talked about that last week a little bit, that it's in our weaknesses, right, that God shows up. And
Yeah.
faith is a more powerful witness. And sometimes it's, whether it's physical weakness or spiritual or emotional, whatever, we become dependent, and it makes us much more aware of what's going on around us. And then we see God show up in those kind of places.
Yeah.
Because otherwise, everything's going good, right? Our life is very busy, and we're doing our own little
Right,
thing.
yeah.
When you think of getting through some of these things, a day at a time, being out of your house for 40 years or however long it was. So 40 years of wilderness wandering.
16 months or something. I
Yeah.
don't know. I always put that stuff behind me.
What maybe Bible verse stands out, Bible story? What do you cling to in those kind of times?
That's mine, 1 Corinthians 10:13.
Okay.
It's always been my thing.
Yeah, okay. And that he's not going to give you more than you can bear.
Right.
So a lot of people would look at this and go, I couldn't do that. So as you're looking at it, what's going through your mind and your heart as you're thinking? Because I talked on Sunday about this long middle, in a race, So if you're running 26 miles, you get to 13 and you're out really far, but you got really far to go. And so what's going on in your head, what you're thinking about, what you're focused on helps you in that time. And so as you're going through those times, what are maybe habits, or what are things that you lean on to kind of get you through those?
Well, one thing is still being active in worship, and doing whatever we did it within the churches, like LWML choir, that kind of stuff, just continue to live your life and not let it consume you.
Yeah.
That's, because for me, God has always been there. So I don't know how it is if you don't have him. So,
right.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think of the church as, in that Hebrews 12:2 passage, or 1, since we're surrounded by this great cloud of witnesses. And it's people that testify to the goodness of God that we're surrounded by, sometimes both in the history of the Bible, but then also the local congregation. So when you think about worship, when you think about fellowship, what do you receive from that? What's that look like?
I just remember during COVID, sitting in front of the computer, having a service like there, not being able to sing with everybody, not being able to do the confessions with everybody. To me, I need everybody around. I need people around me. I didn't like watching church with a cup of coffee in my pajamas or anything. It just doesn't, I don't know, it just wasn't church to me. So I was so glad when we were able to come back into a worship service.
Yeah. When you think, so let's say you're talking to somebody who doesn't really go to church and they're struggling. How would you encourage them? What would you say that this is what it provides?
To me, if you're open to it, it provides support. It provides people who are willing to talk to you, listen to you, give you some guidance or whatever. There's something about being part of the family of believers, you might say.
And then it's both, I think sometimes when we hear, like, people are hearing your story, and it's easy when we think about our lives to get caught up in our littleness and say, but I never had to go through anything like that, right? And so it's encouraging to me. Well, Carol made it through, right? And her focus was still Jesus and how he shows up. And I love how you put that, right? That first you said 3 things he does.
Well, sometimes he walks ahead of me.
He walks ahead of you.
Even though I didn't want to go that direction.
So that's how you ended up with George.
Yeah, that's how I did. And sometimes when he takes me where he wants me to go, then he walks next to me to help me.
And that was the Sunday school that he came alongside and helped you
and with my
provide
teaching and whatever I did when I
yeah.
was at that school.
So he was with you so you could do what you did.
So I could do why he brought me to that point, and then for the fact of meeting George, and then in those other situations, he did a lot of carrying of me.
Okay.
I forgot about the surgery I had on my heart too.
If anybody wants to compete with Carol for hard things, I think that's going to be difficult.
I'm good old solid German stock.
I just put it behind me. Keep going.
I know, I
Keep
can't.
going.
You just can't, dwell on it.
Yeah. When you think about, and it talks about running the race marked out with us with perseverance. Last week we talked about going through suffering. Those people went through suffering because of the hope of greater resurrection. When you think about the life to come or whatever, how does that help your faith today?
Well, just the fact that I know, because I am getting older and I know that, my end might be coming and what I'm going to have to go through before that time or whatever, but that isn't the end.
Yeah.
There's something.
So what do you look forward to?
Well, I don't know if we do see our family, but I'm looking forward to seeing my daughter that's there.
Picture of a family reunion.
Yeah.
What do you look forward to letting go of in this life?
My rheumatism in my knee.
Yeah.
And my bad teeth and hair and,
Yeah, I love that. Luther used to call his body a bag of worms around my neck. I love that. And Paul talks about it as an old tent, right?
Yeah.
That will be discarded for whatever glorified body.
No, I had my yearly physical today, and because of this arthritis and my knees getting worse, and he said, well, maybe you should use a cane or a walker. I'm going, no walker. I'm not using any walker.
The German stock, there it is. I'm not ready yet. Yeah.
Don't give me that.
Okay.
Maybe I'll try a cane, but I'm not using a walker.
Yeah. And that's, somebody once told me, one of our older saints, the key to joy in older age is surrendering gracefully the things of youth. I thought that was a great thing of having to surrender a little bit at a time. And you think about that, a lot of life is, as you get older, after a while you stop driving, after a while.
Oh, yeah,
after a while,
gosh.
you know.
If I have to give up driving, because I'm kind of an independent person.
Really? I would have never picked that out. Yeah, and pretty soon, though, they're going to have self-driving cars, so you're going to have to learn the app, Carol. You have to get an app.
Well, listen, Rayleigh's Spiller has an app.
Yeah.
The lady next door helped me with it. I still cannot do that dumb thing. I tried to do it by myself.
So you're ordering like 50 rutabagas or something?
They
and-
pull up, stuff that she didn't show me that when she showed it to me. I'm a person that has to, you tell me this step. You hit that key, then you hit this one, and then that one, and that one. But they're pulling up stuff that they're different keys than those things. So I just cut out the coupons that you could cut out with scissors and
So I can see you with this driving app. You're going to order a Toyota and you get like an Escalade. that comes with you. No, probably not.
I have somebody else do it for me. If I needed something on the computer, I ask George or my daughter, and they do it, so I don't have to deal with it.
And here's another thing, kind of a similar question, and you can think about it for a minute. So the passage that we have on Sundays talks about discipline and how God uses hard things in our life to shape us, right, in the image of Christ. And so sometimes we think of discipline as you do something wrong and you get smacked for it, right? And other times discipline is more disciple, it's more shaping you. And so as you kind of look back on all these experiences, how do you think this has shaped you? And you kind of alluded to that, like you have a different perspective of people with disabilities and that, right, because of that. How else has God used these things to shape you and shake you in life and in your faith? Let me give you a few that I just see. Your sense of humor is great. I mean, that's the one thing that always stands out to me. And I remember when you and George were going through all that stuff, the house fire and then the identity, and there was always a sense of hope in your voice, like this is not the worst thing, this is. And you've said it a number of times, right? You move on and you put it behind you because, and I think it goes back to that, right? God is either going to lead you, He's going to walk with you, or He's going to carry you. I mean, you've said it in a number of ways, but.
Speaking of my sense of humor, when I was a kid, if people asked me what I wanted to be, I wanted to be a clown. Because in my day, clowns were funny and they made people happy and laugh. But God has given me many opportunities for me to be, in some performance or to use my wish to make people happy by humor.
Yeah.
In so many ways, and even, George lets me do whatever I want, which is great to have a husband like that. He just laughs, because of some of the things that I've done. And it's been, I didn't know what it was like to be a pastor's wife. My dad was a janitor,
Yeah.
And my mom was 16 when they got married. My dad had worked in the coal mines in Pennsylvania, and he was 21. So I didn't come from any kind of background like that, and I never wanted to marry a pastor because the pastors I saw, they always had a black suit on, and they never looked happy, and I thought, that's not for me. But George was a vicar when I met him, so I always say I married a vicar. I didn't marry a pastor. But anyway, I have found in this church life where I have been able to use that, and that really makes me happy because I'm kind of a creative person.
Yeah.
I'm not a science math person. I don't work from that side of the
Right.
brain.
Yeah. Nice. And I know you're always doing that with the kids things, and the tea. Got an idea for the last couple of questions. One is, what's an unexpected joy and maybe an unexpected challenge of being married to a pastor?
I guess unexpected joy is just what I've been able to experience being in family of believers, and like when George was doing the interims, we went to 3 different congregations and whatever, and so there were different experiences at each one, but I enjoyed them all. I was known for decorating bathrooms. That was my big
Decorating bathrooms. A new skill discovered today. A
Well,
spiritual gift of bathrooms.
especially women, you want to go in a bathroom that has no pictures, no flowers, no nothing. And when we did it in Modesto, the men said, well, what about our bathroom? So we decorated.
Wow.
Yeah, so,
Equal time for the men.
I know. It makes a difference, what how you feel when you. But anyway, that was one of my things I did when we went to these different churches. I've
Okay,
just
so the
always-
body of Christ at each place
Yeah,
is
and
unexpected joy.
being a Lutheran school teacher and being in that, and I used to direct school musicals, which gave me a lot of joy.
Yeah.
I mean that
Nice.
part of creativity.
Yeah, yeah.
And then like acting, I got chances. Well, when we were with Steve and
Jennifer,
Jennifer
yeah.
in that Little Village Opera group.
Yeah.
Loved that.
That was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
And challenges. What
Challenges?
Just life is a breeze living with George. Is that what you're saying?
Well, I don't know. I just remember the first church we went to, the pastor's wife had told me, just don't think that you have to be involved in everything. Just pick what you want to do. And so for me, I've always just been me, whatever, because I didn't know what expectations were for pastor's wife, which was funny. The one church we went to in Modesto, the first Elder Bell meeting, they asked me to play the piano for their hymn, because the former pastor's wife, music was her thing.
Yeah.
And I learned to play the piano when I was 10 or something, and I could play really well with one hand for my school kids, but I'm going, oh, that's not my thing.
Wrong pastor's
But I
wife.
know, but sometimes they expect certain things. So I would look and see, what is this church? Where can I fit in here? Or what can I
Okay.
do? So like if they need a Sunday school teacher or they need someone.
Clown ministry.
Yeah, no, yeah, I should have that. I would like that, to do that, but,
Yeah.
like Pastor Tejan said about, not being a pastor because they're always complaining about you or whatever.
Yeah.
The challenge is to be able to shut that stuff out, because I know people gripe about this, that, and the other thing.
Yeah.
And especially when we had to move our church here, that was kind of a hard time and
Oh,
close
yeah.
the school and whatever, but.
Yeah.
Just, I try not to make that involved in my life, and a lot of times George doesn't share some things with
Yeah.
me, so, but I don't know.
So that's the pastor's wife coping mechanism. You say, honey, you're on your own. I'm not dealing with that.
And I've always been sort of allowed to be who I am and do what I want to do, and
Nice.
whatever, so
Yeah.
I don't.
Very cool. I'm going to give you the last word. Anything you would add? Word of encouragement? Anything?
Just the fact that for me, having had God given me the parents I had so that I had that foundation from the beginning, and how He's been in my life all the way through, I don't know what it's like to be without Him. So
Yeah.
for me,
So that
it's-
foundation of a lifelong
Yeah.
faith, always
Yeah.
knowing Christ.
Yeah.
Well, let's close with the word of prayer, and we'll be on our way. Father, thank you for the blessing that you give us in your Son, Jesus Christ, that all of us are running a race that's marked out for each one of us. We thank you that you're a God who leads, a God who comes alongside, and a God in our hardest times who carries. Thank you for Carol, for her witness to your goodness through her life, and for you always showing up. And so we just pray, Lord, that you might use us to bring encouragement and strength to the body of believers, that we're surrounded by a great cloud of witnesses, all saying the same thing. Stay on the road, keep showing up, because our God is faithful. We give you thanks and praise in Jesus' name. Amen.